Turkish court finds newspaper staff guilty on t.error c.harges. Istanbul, a Turkish court sentenced staff members of the country's leading opposition newspaper to lengthy prison terms on Wednesday on charges of aiding a terrorist organization. The high-profile trial, criticized as unfair by rights groups and supporters of the newspaper, was seen as a bellwether for thousands of political prisoners swept up in a crackdown on dissent following Turkey's failed 2016 military coup. 14 staff members of Cumhuriyet, a secular, nationalist newspaper, were found guilty on charges of aiding a terrorist organization. Prosecutors alleged the staff had supported terrorist groups, including both the Kurdistan Workers Party, an outlawed Kurdish militant group, and the conservative movement led by Fetullah Gulen, a Pennsylvania-based cleric who Turkey accuses of masterminding the coup attempt. Gulen denies any involvement with the failed coup. "The verdict sends a desperate message," said Özgür Ogrit, Turkey's representative of the Committee to Protect Journalists. The authorities were unable to prove their claims of malpractice and connections to multiple outlawed organizations at court. Turkey's political climate demanded a sentencing, so they did with the vague terrorism law clause of aiding a terrorist organization, he said. Among those given prison terms at the Silivri courthouse on the outskirts of Istanbul were journalists, columnists, a cartoonist and newspaper executives, who had been jailed for months under pretrial detention. Editor-in-chief Murat Sabuncu was sentenced to 7 years and 6 months in jail. Prominent journalists Ahmet Sik and Aydın Engin also received jail terms of 7 years and 6 months. 3 staff members were acquitted of all charges. All the staff members on trial were released pending an appeal and are banned from traveling outside the country. Ahmet Kamaladoglu, a teacher included in the case, was sentenced to 10 years in prison for posting a tweet that the newspaper reported. The Cumhuriyet staff members presented their final defense in court Tuesday, and Akin Atlay, the newspaper's chief executive who had been imprisoned for more than 500 days, denied charges that he and his staff had aided any terrorist organization. The primary role of a newspaper is not to make money, but to present news, truth, criticism and views to the public, Atlay said in court. Atlay, the last remaining staff member still jailed after all others were released on bail in March, was sentenced to 7 years, 3 months and 15 days in jail, but he was released pending appeal. Prosecutors based their case against the Cumhuriyet staff largely on social media posts and news reports, as well as contacts the defendants made that they said were nothing out of the ordinary for any journalist to produce balanced news reports. Journalists have the right to speak to a whole range of people in the country in order to write full, well-founded articles, said Kadri Gürsel, a political columnist for Cumhuriyet accused in the case, in his final defense. Ahmet Sik, one of Cumhuriyet's investigative reporters convicted Wednesday, was also jailed in 2011 for reports that exposed the inner workings of the Gulen movement and its infiltration of state institutions. The verdict could further strain Turkey's relations with Europe and the United States, who have criticized what they say is the Turkish government's growing authoritarianism. Wednesday's verdicts came amid a wider crackdown in Turkey on freedom of expression. Emergency law was instated after the 2016 failed military coup and 50,000 people were arrested. The government says it is fighting terrorism, but critics say the government has used the failed coup as a pretext to silence its critics, including liberal and secular opposition. Cumhuriyet, the oldest newspaper in Turkey, is known for independent reporting that has often put it at odds with the country's rulers. Can Dündar, the newspaper's former editor-in-chief, was convicted on charges of leaking state secrets after publishing photos that claimed to show Turkish intelligence supplying arms to rebel fighters in Syria. Dündar, who now lives in exile in Germany, was initially included in the trial alongside the 17 Cumhuriyet staff members, but was separated from the case when the judge read Wednesday's verdict. While journalism in Turkey has been a dangerous profession in recent times, rights groups said media freedom in the country has sharply deteriorated since the failed coup. Turkey ranked number 157 out of 180 countries in the 2018 Reporters Without Borders Press Freedom Index. And the country is the world's leading jailer of journalists. according to the Committee to Protect Journalists. About 150 media outlets have been shut down after the coup attempt, and online censorship has spiked. The government denies that it has sought to stamp out all critical media and says those arrested are not journalists, but are criminals and terrorists. Supporters of Cumhuriyet's convicted staff say the verdict was expected as the government cracks down on independent media. Damla Atlay, a lawyer who helped organize a solidarity group for the jailed staff members and attended the trial Wednesday, said she expected the verdict to be unfair. "All this time has been unfair anyways," Atlay said, referring to the months of imprisonment and lengthy trial. More, purge of Turkey coup supporters intensifies more, Turkey detained 6,000 in coup crackdown.